but a little bit darker red is good. It means more iron, more flavor. All right, so this is a good quality in the quality of the meat, not in the fabrication. All right. Now this pig was never in a bag. It's what we call hanging meat. Hanging meat meaning what? It was as it was slaughtered and cleaned up. It's what you call a dressed carcass. So it's not processed in any way other than, you know, we took out the guts and took off the head, took off the hair. All right. In buying a local meat, the pig is probably the best choice because you can do so much with it. With beef, we had all of that excess fat. In pork, we had, you know, even the skin is usable, all right? So all of that stuff could be used. Let's start to clean this up a little bit, though. What are you doing? Grab me a paper towel out of there.
What, are you shy?
No.
No flash photography, please.
Flash photography. All right, so let's break this thing down into its parts, and we'll talk about breed and everything later again. So pork is quite a bit smaller than beef. A half a hog weighs about 100 pounds. All right, half hog weighs about 100 pounds in its market form. Huh?
How old is this hog?
How old is this pig? That's a good question. A hog is ready for slaughter in about 6 months after birth. All right, so it goes from a little tiny piglet like this to 260 pounds in 6 months. Imagine that. You have a little baby, and in 6 months you have a linebacker. That means what? They eat like crazy. Some exposed meat there.
Where's the bacon?
We have it in the back, all cured and smoked.
Can we go to smoke?
No. All right, ready? Now, to break it down, first thing we're going to do is take out this kidney. They leave the kidney in for inspection. It's got a cut in it, all right?
Inspection what?
And that tells you that there's no disease in it. So that was inspected by the USDA. The kidney is quite light in color. That tells me that it's a younger animal. If it was a deep dark red, that would tell me it's older, and it's fairly light.
How would you tell us if it has like disease?
They cut into it and there would be worms or something in it, or an abscess. And then they might condemn the whole carcass.
Okay.
All right? So they make a cut, they inspect it. They also look for any visual contaminants. Now, one of the things you do when you slaughter a pig is you roll up this fat. This fat sits over this area here, and they roll it up. This fat is called the leaf lard. And leaf lard pulls right out. It's a hard, crumbly fat. It's the kidney fat, like we saw in the beef. Leaf lard is excellent for rendering. And what do I mean by rendering?
Melting it down.
Melting it down, right. We're going to turn it into clean lard. A clean lard you can purchase, but when you buy lard from a large company, they usually put some sort of preservative in it. When you make this lard yourself, you have a much cleaner tasting lard that's very good for cooking with.
Hanger steak.
And the lard is easy enough to make. You just melt down the fat and pour it through a screen, and you have, you know, clean lard. Then whatever you use it for has a nice flavor. Like, You can use lard for baking, making pastries and pie doughs. You can use lard for starting dishes. You know what I mean? You put a little bit in the pan, throw your onions in, right? So you're creating that lard. So a reason why you bought this whole pig is not just for the cuts, but also for the amount of fat that comes off of it. And that fat is fat that you can use in a lot of other things. So maybe you don't buy a pig every week. Maybe you buy one once a month and you make all your lard for that whole month. Yes, you use the meat and all that too, but you're also using all the byproduct. All right, so we're gonna save all of this and cook it down. I was gonna say we're gonna need some sheet trays, but we can wait on that. Everything will stay up here. All right, so we took off the leaf lard, we took out the kidney. Off the front of the pig, right in here, there would be a flap that sticks out about this far. That flap would look like this if you sliced it, and that's called the jowl, all right? And the jowl is used for curing, and the jowl has a lot of fat and a little bit of lean, and jowl can be used for making jowl bacon, or it can be used for making the classic Italian guanciale. Guanciale. Guanciale is like you would cure it like pancetta. You would cure it with salt and spices and then let it hang for like 3 months or so, you know. And then you would slice the guanciale really thin and use it to make some of your classic Italian dishes like pasta carbonara, all right? Or you could just eat guanciale on a cracker. All right, so that's what the jowl would look like. You can see the really nice marbling in there. That tells you this is a good quality pig, just off of the jowl. All right, so the jowl is actually missing on this one. It would be hanging down. All right, now let's break down the pig. Oh, assessing quality also. One of the things I would look at would be the fat back, and this one's got a really nice hard fat back and quite a lot of it. All right, that's a good quality pig. The Mangalitsa pig that this is crossed with, right, is known as a lard pig. It would have a heavy, heavy fat. So you bought this because it's fed, which may sound like a negative. All right, what I'm gonna do now is I'm gonna take off the feet. I'm gonna grab this saw. You wanna grab me the saw off the outside of that cage?
So
We're
what
gonna take
did I-
off the
what did I
feet.
disking it?
I'll take everything.
What did I disking it? Like,
Huh?
didn't disking the skin of the pig.
What would you do with the skin?
No, but like, why didn't I disking it? Because like the beef we had was like the skin, right? The beef we had did have no skin.
No, the beef never has skin because it becomes leather.
Okay.
It becomes coach bags. You know, coach. It's like a nice bag. Go to that outlet. Don't buy a real one. All right, what I'm going to do first is take off the feet. Take off the feet, right? Pig's feet. And pig's feet can be used for curing and smoking and add flavor. You can put them into soup or greens. They get a lot of flavor. Then I'm going to take a little slice off of this just to show you something else. Now some chefs are buying what they call a pork shank. The pork shank would be this whole section, and you would turn it into what? What would that be if it was veal? That would be your ossobuco, right? So you could get a pork shank take the skin off and braise it like an ossobuco. All right, so there's ossobuco, a little mini version. All right. And then we have the front foot. The front foot we take off a little bit further up, right here. And when you take off the front foot, I always cut with the knife first, and then with the saw. You actually don't even need the saw. Watch. You can just go through the joint like that. Pig's feet, right? For flavor. I'm a German. I would put it in sauerkraut. You know what I mean? Like to give it flavor. You could also put it with like greens, collard greens. You could put it in with kale. You can use it to help make a soup. You know what I mean? You could throw it in a tomato sauce to give it body. All right, so it's there. The skin gives it collagen, right? And then the little bit of meat in there also give it some flavor. Then we're going to take off the hock. This is called the hock. And again, you don't really need the saw, but
How can you be so accurate?
it's right there. How could you not know where to go? There's the hock. Now the hock, this one is hairy, but the hock you could cure and smoke, and then use a smoked hock in a soup. You use a smoked hock with beans and greens and things like that. You could cook this whole, right? I've seen it soaked in soy and ginger and garlic, and then they braise it slow. And then put it over noodles, right? As a whole big dish. As braised pork or slow cooked pork, right?
The part of knuckles, or the hot.
Huh?
German, you always used to deep fry it. Is it this piece?
This what?
Deep fried, like.
Yeah, you could do that after it's slow cooked. You could slow cook it and then deep fry it and crisp it. But you got to get it tender first. If you just deep fry the whole thing, it'd be chewy. You know what I mean? You got to get it tender. But yeah, the hock is kind of flavorful.
Yes.
Again, you know, the Germans would roast it, put it on a big plate with bratwurst and potatoes and all kinds of sauerkraut and stuff, and go woo-hoo, in the fall for Oktoberfest. You know, there's a lot of different uses for it, though. Like I said, again, it could go with greens. You could slice it into ossobuco as well. All right? You understand the hock? Go to Joe's Shanghai Kitchen in Queens. You get a whole big plate of noodles and braised, and it's enough for like 3 people.
You got like dumplings, like soup
The
dumplings.
soup dumplings.
Yeah. Oh,
It's
great.
good to have a restaurant in New York City.
Huh?
They got like Hulk. How do you cook the Hulk? What
Hulk?
is it? Like kind of like.
Yeah.
Okay. And with noodles in the bottom.
Yeah. So good. Rustic. You know, we're talking about a rustic food. So, if I'm buying a whole pig and breaking it down, I only get 1 or 2. You know what I mean? So, it's not like, what? It's not like you could just serve that, you know what I mean? I would probably use that for flavoring a soup if I bought the whole pig, right? If I buy these as a box, I can get a whole case of them for, you know, relatively cheap, for like $1 a pound. So they're really inexpensive. Okay. Next, and that's what I'm trying to show you is not only am I breaking down the pig, but I'm breaking down in a style that would be what you would see out there in the normal situation. You know what I mean? Like we're turning it into HRI cuts. All right. In the breakdown of a pig, there's a number of different ways to do it, though. And you're seeing some of these craft butchers, specialty butchers, break down the pig in a couple of different styles. All right. So what I'm going to do is take off the ham right here through the middle of the pelvic bone. Take this. This is the flank steak right there. Push this down. And then I'm going to cut the ham straight across like this. All right? But if we were in Spain, they would take the ham all the way down to the end of the pelvic bone. And then they would cure that as what you call the Serrano ham or the jamón ibérico. It's quite a bit longer. All right? The same with the front. In Italy, they'll cut this all the way between like the 4th and 5th and have this long section here, which they would call the copa, all right? And that's where you would get your copa ham or your cabricol, things like that. You know that, cabricol or copa?
Copacabana.
Yeah, like that, except not that. No, but seriously, that's the copa. So the way they break things down is different. Here we have a major focus on ribs. You know what I mean? In the U.S., we like our ribs, so we're not going to destroy the ribs to make the copa. All right, we're going to cut it in a way where we get the full rack of ribs. All right, it's a commodity, ribs. So let me take off the ham. And let's get this show going here. In the U.S. style, we cut it through the middle of between the H-bone and the tailbone, right in the middle of the pelvic bone here, which basically cuts the sirloin in half. It makes it a really simple little cut. And there's our fresh ham. Now we can see the marbling in there. Look at the marbling. It's a really good quality pig. These pigs do really well, especially because it's winter. They eat like crazy. You know what I mean?
Excuse me, chef.
Yeah.
I see two different colors there.
Yeah, that's just the maturity of the pig. This coloration always happens where this muscle must be used just a little bit more than this one. And as the pig matures, it would all turn darker. So he's not there yet. He's only six months old. The baby. But that's really, see that really nice marbling in there? That's a really good pig. Really good pig.
Can we try? Can we please try?
Huh?
Yeah, can you please try it?
Try it? You mean like eat some?
Yeah.
Yes. Big sushi.
You mean like taste it?
Yeah.
Anything is possible. Now, I'm going to cut this up here. I'm cutting between the first and second rib, basically. I'm cutting it a little bit long. I make that cut, and then I cut again with the knife. And then I'm going to hit a blade bone in there. There's the blade bone. That blade bone is the end of the pork loin. So this is now a full pork shoulder, all right? And the full pork shoulder is broken down into two parts. It's broken down into what we call the Boston butt, and then the bottom would be the picnic. All right. All right. So. We're going to take off what's called a neck bone. And pork neck bones can be purchased as a commodity item too. What would you do with neck bones?
Squid.
Yeah, stock, flavor. Pork stock is not something that you typically make like for consomme or anything like that. But pork stock I would use for making, you know, pork flavored dishes like
Stew.
yeah, stew or sometimes I would use it if I was making like a roast pork. I would have the stock for making the sauce with it. You know what I mean? Or I'm making a porky soup. I made a lot of rustic soups in my restaurant. You know, you would have slices of kibasi in it, and carrots and celery, and kale or cabbage, everything all mixed together. And then the stock that I use would be a pork stock, because you're not really tasting the stock like you would in a consomme or something like that.
Was your restaurant German focused or?
Yeah. I had an outdoor beer garden.
Ooh.
Sounds good.
That's had?
Outdoor and beer.
Yes. Had.
Is it at your house, Joshua?
Now it's not in existence
Why?
because it's not open.
It's only in your fantasy.
That's the neck bone. So, neck bones, again, you're putting these like smoked neck bones, again, would go with greens. It's like traditional to cook greens with neck bones. Also, you can take the neck bones and put them in tomato sauce. If you're making a big pot of tomato sauce, neck bones are excellent in there. Or any kind of like,
You just toss
Slow
it in, let
cooking.
it sit, you go.
yeah, just let it go. And it almost falls apart. You know, you got to be careful to like strain the sauce afterwards. All right, now I'm going to cut this in half. You see this blade bone right here? I'm going to cut about an inch over from the blade bone. Make a straight cut like this. And again, this is the US style of cutting where we just cut right straight through all the structure. But in other cultures, they would peel this piece out, and then they'd have this whole shoulder as another piece. But I need to show you what is the US style. But if you broke this pig down yourself, you could break it down any way you want, you know what I mean? Like, the beauty of buying a half a hog is you can do custom cuts. And one of the things I'm seeing in the marketplace today is what's called a pork collar. And the pork collar is, we're taking this off with this fat on. This one's got a lot of extra fat, but usually it wouldn't be quite that much. But they're roasting that with the skin and the fat on as a roast pork collar. And charging quite a lot of money in some of these high-end restaurants. Like it down in New York. Okay. So I'm just cutting through the arm bone there. And then I'm taking off the picnic. So this is now the picnic. Picnic is sold with the skin on unless otherwise specified. It's got a big blood vessel that runs through it here. You want to pull that out. That's the main blood vessel. Yeah. See that? When they stuck it, Hilltown does a lousy job. Remember I was talking about Hilltown?
Mm-hmm.
So there should be it should be clear, like there shouldn't be any blood in there. It's not bad though. They did okay. So really good quality. And then the Boston butt is always sold skin off. And let's take off this skin. And then the reason it's sold skin off, because underneath the skin is a thick layer of fat, and that thick layer of fat is known as fatback. So what would you do with fatback?
Rendering.
You could render it. In Italy, they cure it. Cured fatback is known as lardo. And lardo would be sliced, and you could eat it just the way it is, or you could use it to start a dish.
They just cure it with salt, like
Just
spices.
salt, spices,
And they slice it then.
and then you slice